Howdy folks, good morning, afternoon, evening, tea time, whatever the fuck time it is in your part of the world, and welcome back to the Touchpad Warrior YouTube channel. I'm trying to still get used to saying YouTube instead of Twitch. I'm sorry, I haven't really recorded a lot of YouTube content. December was a very, very busy month, but we're going to try to get back into the swing of things with showing some interesting specs that you potentially could do being an Arms Warrior in Shadowlands, which is double Ravager? I'm not going to try to clickbait you. It has, like, some potential. We're going to go into why and, like, how much effort you would have to go through to make it better than what Dreadnought would do. Hope you guys are okay with that ride. Thor also says hi. So, here's my character Justice. Last week, one of the affixes was Spiteful. So, the only real change that I made into my build for doing Mythic Plus as a Necrolord Arms Warrior, trust me, okay, I know. Condemn's good. War Machine still ended up being really good. Skull Splitter, however, I feel like would have had more potential to help make up for the heavy cleave build that I'm rocking for single target. Because there were scenarios on a boss where I would get raid starves, and since I'm not spec'd for double time to bull rush out or heroic leap out and then charge back in for additional rage, I had to go Stormbolt. Stormbolt was more so to help with Spiteful, for me being a melee and Spiteful being a huge pain in the ass. Stormbolt ended up being really, really useful. In combination, also, I would use, Intimidating Shout, or I would also use Piercing Howl. 70% slow AoE is really, really strong for Spiteful. But this isn't a video on how to do Mythic Plus, although hopefully I'd like to do one at some point for a Necrolord Warrior, that very, very small niche community. This build revolves around Ravager. Now, Ravager in the past has not actually been that good. It seems like on paper that it could do well, right? It's half the cooldown of Bladestorm, it does half the damage, makes sense, and just rotates AoE damage for 10 seconds. Now, one of the difficulties with Ravager in the past, when it was first implemented, was that it would stay entirely still. Now, it actually travels to your opponents, so if you were to drop it and the tank were to pull mobs away, the Ravager would slowly work towards continuing to hit those mobs. Very, very helpful. Very good. Now, the thing you're sacrificing here is Dreadnought. And I would like to go into why Dreadnought's really, really powerful in another video, but the key thing is that Dreadnought's line effect, which was the Azerite ability from BFA, does really, really good damage. And in combination with Sweeping Strikes, it will actually create 2 echoing waves of that Dreadnought damage. Makes it really powerful. And according to Sims, Dreadnought still outweighs Ravager. But with one of the new legendaries that I got last week, or 2 weeks ago now, sorry, actually, activating Ravager, Recklessness, or Avatar randomly casts one of the other 2 abilities at reduced effectiveness. Now, this does switch over to Bladestorm if you were talented out of Ravager. So when I was first using this, I was like, okay, cool, let's use Bladestorm, and I was getting Recklessness or Avatar. Even though I'm not Fury, I was still getting Recklessness. Makes it really wicked because that 20% critical strike, being Necrolord, that you have critical strike damage, and if you don't have enough critical strike, what's the point of having critical strike damage? Makes it useless. So I've gravitated my Necrolord Warrior towards a heavy crit build, even though I'm losing out on GCDs for haste. And it's ended up working surprisingly well. But the theory came up, with Bladestorm having a 1.5 minute cooldown and Ravager having a 45, wouldn't I get additional procs of Avatar for like 7 seconds and Recklessness? And sure enough, when I drop my Ravager, there we go. I get my 100% rage generation increased and 20% critical strike of all abilities, which also frees me up to cast more Whirlwinds and Merciless Bone Grinder, which we'll go into in a second. The other thing is, not the other thing, sorry. We'll go into conduits in a bit. I'm getting distracted. 45-second cooldown, which means basically every single trash pull, you can Warbreaker and Ravager. And then you will get Avatar or Recklessness on top of it. Every 45 seconds. So instead of like choosing when to use your Bladestorm for burst AoE damage, you're always able to use it. And you don't have to stress about it. It's like, oh, do I have enough time to, should I wait on the CD or do I have enough time to do this, etc. Now, the 50/50 shot, there's another Ravager from popping Avatar. I also have a macro to my trinket, which will give me haste or crit. And so that puts me at 40% crit right there. Beautiful. The thing with, and now we'll go into it, the Bone Grinder. And I didn't talent for this with doing my Mythic Plus, but I kind of wish I did. Merciless Bone Grinder obviously would affect Bladestorm instead, when Bladestorm or Ravager, and Whirlwind deals 65% increased damage for 7 seconds. Now, this effect actually only works decently well off of Ravager itself. And so you're casting your Whirlwinds, you're getting rage generation because of Ravager and how it works. 7 rage each time it deals damage. And then you get your Bone Grinder. So, neat. Okay, cool. I'm down for 65% Whirlwind damage because I'm using Fervor, so I'm using it anyways. When you get the Ravager proc off of Avatar, it gives you that at reduced effectiveness as well. Even though you technically have casted a Ravager, its reduced effectiveness for some reason coincides with Bone Grinder and reduces the duration of that, only giving you about 2 seconds of bonus Whirlwind damage. So, hopefully on this next one I will actually get that and I can show you guys for an example. But the whole dealio here, and what I'm going to try to go into, and we have some VODs for it, is that if you were to combo using your banner, you use Avatar, and then you Ravager, you can get some crazy effects. And even if you don't get a secondary Ravager, you still have 20% crits, 20% damage increase, another 10% crit. It's doing gnarly things, even if you don't get that secondary Ravager. And then with Bone Grinder, you could have extra Whirlwind damage on top of this with your banner. What it's turned out being is that I end up getting more glory sacks faster, which seems to be one of the major reasons why Necrolord Warriors kind of suck with their ability. If you don't have enough rage to actually generate so that you can get your benefit of your Conqueror's Banner to get glory, or you don't pop it on a small AoE pack that you can just get stacks really quick, then what damage buff are you carrying after the banner fades? That's the complication. What has turned out, and I don't think we're actually going to bank on this, I was actually using Veteran's Repute, because that gives you an instant 5 glory and then 12% strength, because that's the 171 that I have. And we're using Emily because also gets 5% additional strength. So, really wicked for Mythic Plus is using Emily. And I'll show you guys some footage of how Ravager can play into effect. Again, not to like say this is the most broken build possible and like you guys need to be running this. It's just kind of neat. I was very competitive. That was the word I was looking for. I was very competitive against the other classes I was going up against, like Barrel Druids, and then Holy DK, some Mages, some Shadow Priests. I was actually keeping up or beating them in damage in a lot of scenarios. When it came to single target, my single target definitely was dropped. Because even though I'm getting maybe 3 Ravager casts off on a boss fight, those buffs that I was getting, it was morely based on the AoE of Ravager dealing good chunks of damage than it was more so like being able to pump single target. But the freedom of being able to drop a Ravager and then use all your abilities while you're still technically doing like a half Bladestorm ended up being really beneficial to Conqueror's Banner and really beneficial to being able to get interrupts, manage your Spitefuls, to CC, things like that. So I actually really did enjoy playing the spec, and also like who doesn't want to blast around with 2 Ravagers just creating a blender? It's fantastic. Can we get one more? Can we? There we go. Look at that. And then you Warbreaker. And then you do all your things. And you're still whirlwinding on top of it. It's a good time, I swear. So I'll show you guys some footage of doing some Mythic Plus that we did earlier last week. So here's a sped up segment from last night, where I didn't get a double Ravager, but I did get Recklessness with Avatar and a Ravager down. And it made it super crazy on damage. In comparison to Axe, also being an Arms Warrior and being the Dreadnought Bladestorm build they're typically supposed to go. Still ended up beating him in damage, surprisingly. And I was able to just kind of run around like a chicken with my head cut off, being able to just whirlwind. And I had crazy rage generation, which made it even more beneficial. Unfortunately, I didn't have Conqueror's Banner on this, but we also didn't plan on pulling those additional mobs. So with that, I would have had a crazy Conqueror's Banner buff, which in most cases going through these dungeons, I would end up walking out with a 25 or more often seeing 30s than I did before with the previous build. It was surprising. We didn't expect Ravager to actually have some kind of play or be competitive, but it ended up being really fun just for getting those extra recklessness, like bonus recklessness or bonus avatar procs. Or, you know, having a Ravager randomly throw down after you avatar. It ended up being really, really fun. And right here we're on the first boss in Turn of the Scythe. I think I'm still mispronouncing that. With partial cleave, but holding Ravager and all my CDs for after we kill the Droman. We waited for Lust, I got some things going on, did some sweeping strikes, but I wait to pop my banner and all my CDs until the Droman dies and we get the damage buff. And ended up performing decently well, especially compared to a Marks Hunter and a Unholy Death Knight. So banner goes down, pop my Ravager, pop my Avatar, and just going to town and really ramping up all those buffs together. Recklessness was up, everything. And we also finished this fight with getting up to a 27 stat glory, so that's 27% critical strike damage. I was just feeding into this with crazy execute crits. So that critical strike damage bonus ended up being super beneficial towards execute. Mortal Strike still ended up beating my damage, but Ravager was coming in with 10% of my damage for that pull, and that was without a double proc. So with that rage generation, it really helps feed you for those glory stacks on Conqueror's Banner, specifically with being a Necrolord Warrior. So this is more niche into niche, but I think it's kind of my journey now to figure out how I can make the least effective Covenant role for a Warrior beneficial to not just myself, but also party members, with giving them that 20% increased maximum health and 10% critical strike. So it seems like even though Mythic Plus has not been very melee friendly, going with my homie Axe over here, being an Holy Death Knight, and at least having one additional melee with me, I'm buffing up one melee damage and also our tank. So it seems like the most effectiveness I probably could get out of using my banner, and that's the reason why banner ends up being kind of sad compared to Condemn. Condemn deals a lot of damage, and you can use actually really crazy cleave with sweeping strikes and an opening rotation, but this is how I've kind of curved around making good utility and use out of my banner. It ends up being pretty fun. I know I keep saying pretty fun. I'm like trying to convince people. But hey, if you happen to choose choose Necrolord as a warrior, we're gonna figure this out together, guys. We're gonna do it. We're gonna look good doing it too. And here comes the end result of that 8 miss that we did. We got a +2 on it. Top the damage. Granted, Axe did die a decent amount, but for being a Necrolord Arms Warrior, pumped out the damage. Was good to go. Also got some sweet new upgrades. Still sitting at like 196, 187-ish item level there, and using a 184 weapon. Being able to have that kind of damage output ended up being crazy and super fun. So if you want a very, very unique build, and you chose Necrolord, this is actually something you can do. Is it gonna beat out Dreadnought in the long run and with Sims? No, I don't think so. But if you really just want to make a dungeon super entertaining and really, really, really fun, throw around some swords and stuff, Ravager might be for you. So, to do a quick little recap, we are rocking about 20 plus critical strike. We're using crit buff food. We were oiled up, giggity. We had our flask. And the major utility here was using the Tormented Kings. So with those, and through the 14 Mythic Plus that I did last week, at least 10 of which I was using Double Ravager, ended up being very, very comparable to using Dreadnought. And again, it was a lot of fun. Your opening rotation into things would be that you would drop banner, and even though you do want that critical strike bonus afterwards, you can still use Ravager and Warbreaker on every single pull. So you do that right there, and then chances are after your banner, you still have a little bit, maybe half of that duration of that critical strike bonus to get another Ravager and Warbreaker combo off. Whether you want to choose to use Avatar with your 10% critical strike buff from Conqueror's Banner, or afterwards and really bank on getting another Recklessness proc, it's up to you. I would recommend the latter of the two, because there's no point of having critical strike damage if you don't have critical strike, right? But you are still doing a 50-50 shot on whether you get a Ravager on that or a Recklessness. But the cool thing about it is you get a lot of those buffs constantly rolling. Even though it's a 50-50 shot, having Ravager on a 45-second cooldown and then Avatar on a 1.5 is better than rocking two 1.5s. In my opinion, with just stacking up the Tormented King buffs as much as possible. If you guys like this build, neat. Go for it. I understand it's not everybody's cup of tea. And also, I'm trying to emphasize here that I still think Dreadnought is the way to go. And we can do more Mythic Plus, and I will this week, and I'll recap back into here, and we can make some chart comparisons, possibly, if I want to get that fancy and detailed and smart about it. But I'm having fun doing it, and that kind of outweighs, like, the damage performance. I know everybody out there is trying to be the God tier warrior. I already picked the non-God tier Covenant, so I'm going to try to play around with it and see what kind of hidden potential there might be. A lot of warriors aren't going to go Ravager. In most cases, right now, Dreadnought is just the way to go. The Seismic Wave ability from Overpower is really strong, and also having two of them. The one thing I definitely curved from the previous week is I actually ended up not going Cleave. Using Cleave ended up being really only beneficial if you were to have Blade Storm, because you would always keep Deep Wounds rolling on targets. Something I would like to test out is, instead of actually increasing my haste, I kind of want to increase my mastery, because how Deep Wounds works nowadays, and I'll literally read the ability for you guys. Mortal Strike, Warbreaker, or it would be Colossus Smash if you're talented for it, Ravager, or Blade Storm if you're talented for that. Inflict Deep Wounds, dealing X damage, bleed damage over 12 seconds, and increasing the damage the enemy takes from you by the percentage of your mastery. So if I'm constantly rolling those Ravagers, getting Deep Wounds up, and I have decent mastery with my Critical Strike, then that would make those Ravagers chunk even harder, and I'm always rolling Deep Wounds because I pretty much always have a Ravager every single pull. There's the Ravager build, or let's call it Blender build, because you have Whirlwinds going off and sometimes two Ravagers at once, and you're just kind of tornadoing around like a Ninja Blender. Because like I have like rotated things. I still am a chef. I just don't practice it anymore, sadly. I'm not going to go into that. If you guys like that, sweet. If you guys want to see more weird, funky builds that I could potentially make out of being an Arms Warrior in Shadowlands, feel free to drop them in the comments. I'm entirely okay with testing these things out, because I think it's fun, and I'm not like this high top-end tier raider that I need to be these builds, and otherwise you're trash. I'm doing this out of fun because I'm enjoying the game that I've been playing for 15 years. So if you guys have any suggestions or recommendations, feel free to comment below. If you also want to call me stupid for even trying Ravager, feel free to comment that as well. It's okay. I'm totally used to hostility towards myself. You can't break this guy. Unless you say some really terrible things in Twitch chat 5 years ago when I was just starting off, and for some reason it's still a lingering memory. Why? Why does that still hurt me? Anywho, thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Or I guess not tuning in. That would be different. That'd be Twitch. So, there's that thing. If you guys like the content you see here, feel free to check me out on Twitch. I stream there live almost 6 days a week. If you would like to check out other content, there's my primary source of social media that I do is Instagram. Post a lot of screenshots, mounts, collection, etc. And then Twitter. Everybody has a Twitter. You have to have a Twitter. Kind of like a thing. I'll do live feed updates on when I'm doing my streams, or when I get a sweet piece of loot, or something neat happened in the game, or just awesome screenshots. We'll see you all in the next video, and hopefully we'll make it a Dreadnought one. But we'll see. If you guys have other video suggestions, like I mentioned before, feel free to comment them below. Maybe they're not even Warrior Talented spec, or Warrior Talent related, or builds, things, etc. It could be anything. Maybe you want to see a pet battle video. I'll do my best. No promises. I'll see you all in the next one. Have a good night. Morning, evening, afternoon, tea time, whatever the fuck time it is in your part of the world.